Sometimes, people will go to absurd lengths to cover up their affairs. In my case, a stolen car report ended up leading the police straight to my own driveway. You see what I mean? Even the tiniest untruth can expose a much bigger betrayal. For me, it all began with a parking ticket my wife swore had never existed. After 21 years of marriage, nothing prepares you for the moment you realize your spouse has been living a double life. But let me start from the beginning. I work as a foreman for the county parks department, overseeing landscape maintenance. My wife works in the courthouse records office. We met in our early 20s, built what people called the perfect marriage, and raised two amazing kids who both became teachers. We were the couple everyone else admired. Never argued in public, shared everything, and had complete trust in each other. My wife always claimed to be disgusted by cheaters. She'd call out affairs in our social circle with genuine disdain, saying, "If you want to be with someone else, just get divorced first." I would remember those words later, but that's jumping ahead. The first crack appeared about 6 months ago. One morning, I was heading out to inspect the baseball fields when I noticed my wife's car was gone. She had left for work half an hour before me, like usual. But her courthouse shift didn't start for another 90 minutes. That evening, when I mentioned it, she laughed it off, said traffic was bad, so she stopped for coffee until it cleared. It sounded reasonable, except the cafe she named doesn't open until 9 o'clock, and her shift begins at 8:30. A small detail, but it stuck in my mind. Then came the parking ticket. While sorting bills, I found one issued on a weekday at 2 p.m., during her shift, which ends at 4:30. She insisted she hadn't left the courthouse that day, brushing it off as a mistake. But the license plate was hers, the spot was 3 blocks from her workplace, and the timestamp showed her car was there for over an hour. I started paying closer attention. She began working late more often, claiming the office was short-staffed and needed her to help with filing. But courthouse employees here don't get paid overtime, they get comp time, which she never used. Her phone habits changed too. She kept it close, never leaving it unattended. And I knew for a fact the records office didn't send work emails after 5 p.m. I'd even called to ask, pretending I might apply for a job. Around this time, she began bringing up a coworker, Henry more and more. How helpful he was with the new filing system, how dedicated he was to staying late and training others. In over 2 decades, she'd never mentioned a male coworker before. Her stories had always been about the 3 women in her department. Now suddenly, Henry was part of every work tale. My chest grew tight with that anxious feeling you get when you know something is wrong but can't prove it. I wanted to trust her. After all, I had no concrete evidence, but the inconsistencies piled up. The coffee shop story, the parking ticket, the non-existent overtime, and Henry's constant presence in her conversations. One afternoon, I drove by the courthouse during her lunch break to see if her car was there. It wasn't. I waited 45 minutes. She never returned. That night, she told me she ate lunch at her desk because she was too busy to leave. She lied to my face. This time I knew it. That night, she slept peacefully beside me, but the foundation of trust I'd built my life on was cracking. I was afraid of what I might find if I kept digging, but I couldn't stop. Not knowing was eating me alive. I decided I was going to find out exactly what she was doing during those missing hours, and why she was lying. The next morning, I told my supervisor I needed a couple of days off for personal reasons. He didn't press. 21 years of good work had earned me that courtesy. I got home in time to watch my wife leave in her white Toyota Camry, same as always, but now every routine moment felt loaded with suspicion. The parking ticket still nagged me. I drove to the location where it had been issued. It turned out to be a small strip mall with a coffee shop, dry cleaner, and a restaurant. Nothing that would explain an hour-long stay during work hours, and certainly not why she claimed she'd never left the courthouse. We've always kept separate personal bank accounts, splitting household bills but keeping our own spending private. That meant I couldn't track what she was buying, but I could track where she went. And the picture that was forming was one I didn't want to see, but I had to face it. My wife was having an affair. Still, I didn't confront her. Parking tickets and sketchy stories weren't enough. She'd just deny it. I needed proof. My gut told me I was right, and I've learned never to ignore it. That evening, she came home as usual, talking about work, praising Henry's help with the new computer system. I played the part of the trusting husband while quietly planning my next move. The following morning, I watched her leave at 7:45 on the dot. 15 minutes later, I followed. Her car was in its usual courthouse spot. So far, nothing unusual. I parked at a gas station across the street and waited. At 11:30, her Camry pulled out. Instead of heading toward the strip mall from the parking ticket, she turned in the opposite direction. I followed from a distance as she drove through unfamiliar neighborhoods and pulled into the driveway of a modest ranch-style home. I parked 3 houses down and watched her sit in the car for several minutes before walking to the front door like she belonged there. The door opened before she could knock. A man stood there, average build, brown hair, jeans, button-down shirt. This had to be Henry. They hugged. Not a polite, co-worker kind of hug, but the intimate embrace of lovers. Then they went inside together. My worst suspicions were confirmed. All the late nights, the secretive phone use, the ticket, the sudden talk of Henry, it all made sense now. I waited for 2 hours in that quiet neighborhood, my marriage unraveling in the stillness. At 1:40, she emerged, looking happier and more energized than she had in months. Henry walked her to the car, and they kissed, long, slow, unmistakably passionate. I took photos with my phone. The proof I'd been searching for was finally on my phone. The evidence of my wife's affair was undeniable. After leaving Richard's house, she drove straight back to the courthouse, finished her shift, and came home at 5:30 as though nothing had happened. She'd ask about my day, share details about hers, and of course, sprinkle in more praise about Henry, helping with work projects, all while knowing she had spent her lunch hour in someone else's arms. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined. 21 years of marriage reduced to lies and deceit. I'd been through something similar before. A girlfriend who couldn't stop talking about a co-worker until I learned she was sleeping with him. Honestly, I probably already had enough proof to confront her, but I wanted more. I couldn't afford a private investigator, so I would have to do the legwork myself. I wanted to show this wasn't a one-time mistake, but an ongoing, intentional relationship. My plan was simple: follow her again and again until I had a rock-solid case. Whether I confronted her or filed for divorce, one thing was certain: our marriage was finished. She had made her choice, and it wasn't me. I was already beginning to feel detached. She had become everything she once swore she despised. She was a cheater, and I had proof. Still, something told me there was more to the story. The house she visited looked vaguely familiar, like I'd seen it before. That nagging feeling wouldn't go away. 3 weeks of quiet surveillance confirmed the pattern. Every workday, she went to that same house for lunch. Always the same routine. Always the same long, passionate goodbye. The familiarity of the place kept eating at me, until it hit me like a freight train. I had been there 2 years earlier while working for the parks department. We were doing landscaping at an elementary school next door. The house belonged to the school's janitor, Richard. Married. 2 kids. I remembered him as a friendly guy who brought us coffee during the job. A man I thought was devoted to his family. So Henry never existed. She had invented an imaginary co-worker to cover for Richard. Every time she told a story about Henry helping with the filing system or staying late at work, she was talking about Richard. Every compliment about Henry's dedication was really about her lover. The deception was astonishing. And yet, I still wasn't ready to confront her. I wanted a plan that would expose everything in one blow. One Friday morning, she seemed restless, checking her phone, pacing the kitchen. She left for work half an hour earlier than usual. I followed, expecting her to head to the courthouse. Instead, she drove straight to the police station. I parked across the street and watched her rush inside, staying there for over an hour. When she emerged, she looked both relieved and uneasy. She drove to work as though nothing had happened. That night, the truth came knocking, literally. 2 police officers arrived at our door just after 7 o'clock. My wife answered with a concerned, almost theatrical tone, thanking them for coming so quickly. They told her they were there to investigate her stolen car report. I glanced at our driveway where her white Toyota Camry sat. Stolen car? She launched into a story about parking near the courthouse during lunch, returning to find her car gone, searching everywhere, then calling the police, only for it to mysteriously reappear later that evening. She claimed she suspected local kids had taken it for a joyride. The officers asked routine questions. When it happened, where it was parked, whether she saw anyone suspicious. Her answers kept shifting: noon, then 11:30, then 12:15, courthouse lot, then the street, then a nearby shopping center. I watched her dig the hole deeper. Then came the question about the car's GPS. Many newer cars automatically record their location history. They explained they could pull the data to see exactly where it had been. Her face changed instantly. She mumbled about not knowing how that technology worked. But she knew. They asked her to sign a consent form to access the GPS logs. Thinking it would back her story, she signed. Minutes later, they had the full travel record. The car had been parked at the same address, Richard's house, every weekday for 3 weeks, including the day she claimed it was stolen. When asked why she had been there, she denied ever visiting. She insisted the GPS must be wrong or hacked. The lies were becoming absurd. That's when I stepped in. I told them about the affair and showed them the photos, her and Richard kissing, her car in his driveway, all with timestamps spanning 3 weeks. The officers realized she'd filed a false report to cover her tracks. Maybe someone had seen her car at Richard's and told her. Maybe a coworker had recognized it. She panicked and thought claiming it was stolen would give her an alibi. But the plan had backfired spectacularly. Her own lie had handed the police undeniable proof of her infidelity. One of the officers told her point-blank that she'd wasted their time and that she could be arrested. They left with a warning. For me, that was the end. 21 years gone. Her final act of deceit had trapped her in her own web. The stolen car report had brought the truth straight to our doorstep. Sometimes the cover-up is worse than the crime. And sometimes, justice takes care of itself. I filed for divorce 3 days later. My attorney said the GPS records and photos made it an open and shut case. In our state, adultery was grounds for a fault-based divorce, which meant she would walk away with far less. She moved in with her recently divorced brother, claiming she needed time to think. I knew she was scrambling to save her reputation. The hardest part was telling our kids. Both grown now, my son a high school math teacher, my daughter a third-grade teacher. They came over immediately. I showed them the evidence. The photos, the timeline, the lies, the police report that had exposed everything. They were crushed. My son was furious, feeling like his childhood memories were tainted. My daughter was heartbroken, blaming herself as if she'd failed as a child. I made it clear, their mother's choices were her own. The divorce took nearly a year to finalize. I kept the house and most of our assets. She left with her car, a small settlement, and a fine for the false police report. Richard's wife found out through the investigation and divorced him within 2 months, gaining custody of their kids. My ex and Richard tried to make it work, but their relationship lasted less than a year. The kids eventually forgave her, but the bond was never the same. Trust, once shattered, is almost impossible to rebuild. In the end, our marriage fell apart over a parking ticket and a stolen car report. Small lies that uncovered enormous betrayals. But I was free. Free from the dishonesty. Free from the cheating. Sometimes the deepest betrayals lead to the cleanest fresh starts. And I'll say this, she's lucky she wasn't arrested. Not everyone can afford a private investigator, and if you can't, you have to find your own way. I'm a firm believer in protecting your income. So if you've got vacation days or personal time, use them to get answers. But don't lose pay over it. Trust your instincts. If your gut tells you something's wrong, and you can verify it without jeopardizing your livelihood, do it. Life is too short to stay with someone who will betray you and possibly endanger your health.